had someone say to me that my books are the funniest books about murder that they'd ever read.
As entertaining as Sally Hepworth's novels are about crime and family dysfunctionality.
Yes, of course. I mean, who wasn't feeling murderous during lockdown?
Just wait until you see the New York Times bestselling author in front of a crowd.
I always laugh when people say that writing a book is a get-rich-quick scheme. No.
We really shouldn't be surprised. After all, her social media presence highlighting her work, family members, and their shenanigans.
Ooh, what book is this?
That's a good one. You should give that one a try.
Are hilariously real.
I only want to kill them occasionally.
Right.
When I'm in lockdown with them. I like them a lot, generally.
Speaking of, Sally discusses the new book she managed to write while locked down with her family in her Australian home for 2 straight years.
The book is called The Younger Wife, but it is actually about a whole family. The book kicks off with the upheaval of Stephen announcing to his daughters that he's getting married again. And this is quite shocking, both because the woman that he's marrying is 25 years younger and younger than both of his daughters, but also because he is still married to their mother, who is in a nursing home with dementia.
And like most Sally Hepworth novels, it doesn't take long for a crime to occur in The Younger Wife.
There needs to be some death in chapter 1, and then...
Sally talks about the personal events that influenced the book, including the story of her great Auntie Gwen's mysterious hot water bottle.
It's like a rubber bag that you fill with hot water. And I always say little old ladies use it to warm up their feet in bed. I am one of those little old ladies.
And the homicide detectives she has on call to fact-check her crimes.
I can now text them at any time of day and say something like, how can I kill someone quickly without using any weapons? And they will just fire something back. And I just have this at my disposal, which makes me very dangerous.
Plus, despite all her success,
But holy crap, it was not good.
why she still searches out her negative book reviews.
I had one that said my books were like pizza, but Domino's pizza, so the type that you think is going to be a good idea at the time, but then afterwards you really regret it.
Next, in this entertaining conversation with the authentic Sally Hepworth.
Sally Hepworth, we're so happy you're here in person.
I'm so happy too. Angie drove me around St. Louis today while I sang wildly.
We sang Meet Me in St. Louis. We went by the World's Fair Pavilion.
Yeah. And clang, clang, clang went the trolley.
Clang, clang, clang went the trolley. Ding, ding, ding went the bell.
All together now. And the new book, The Younger Wife's here now. And there were a couple of personal influences that you had in writing this book with your great Auntie Gwen and then some of your friends, right?
Yes, so there were 3 sort of seeds that came together to make this book. The first one was, unsurprisingly, younger wives that were showing up in my social circle with more regularity over the last couple of years. Specifically 2 of my very close girlfriends. In one case, it was her father that had married a woman who was younger than herself and her sister. And in the other case, another friend, it was her father-in-law. And both women were younger than the children of the man. And in both cases, they went on to have children. And what was so interesting about it for me as an outsider was that it wasn't the cliche response that either of them had. They weren't angry, they weren't demonising the woman, but what they were was trying to keep their family together, which I think is at all of our core. That's what we want. This is their father, this is their father-in-law, and they were trying to work out how to make it work. So I thought that was interesting, and that kind of just was one thing going on in my brain. And the more I thought about it, and this leads me to the second thing, the more I thought, younger wives is nothing new. We've all seen that before. We've all seen the trope and the cliche in TV and in books, and we know that the younger wife is always blonde. I'm a younger wife, by the way, by 6 or sometimes 7 years, depending on the time of year. But my husband hates it when I call him my much older husband. But that's not what I'm talking about. They're usually blonde. They are a gold digger. They have daddy issues, we've seen it. And I hate cliches, and I didn't want to go there. And so I thought, well, I have to do something different with this. And what was really interesting to me is when I thought about it, in all of those books and films and TV shows that we've seen, we never really think about what the older husband is thinking. We just accept that the woman has daddy issues and is a gold digger, but the man, what? He just, is thinking with his pants? I mean, that's kind of what we think. And I wonder, there's a couple of men in this room. Like, are we selling you short, guys? I don't know. Maybe we are. And I wanted to explore that. So that was the second thing. Give the men some motivation. And what if that motivation isn't good? And the third thing, as this was all percolating, and this was a couple of years ago because publishing is slow, I received a phone call from my great auntie Gwen, who was, we were very, very close, and I was her person. So when anything happened, she called me. And this day she called me to say that she'd had a fall. And we chuckled. I remember that if you're young, you fall over, but if you're old, you have a fall. We both laughed about that. And then she instructed me to go to her house and get her hot water bottle and bring it to her in hospital. And I thought, that's kind of weird. What kind of hospital is this? Don't they have heating? And I said, well, I've got one. I'll bring you mine. And she said, no, I'd like mine. And she was very difficult, Gwen. And I thought, well, what if I buy you one? And she said, no, I need you to go to my house and get my hot water bottle. And I said, fine, where is it? And she said, it's in my spare room, behind the chest of drawers, underneath a pile of newspapers. And I thought, now I'm getting the hot water bottle. What on earth? And as I drove to her house, I got my whole family on the speakerphone, and we were all theorising about what was going on. And my brothers thought maybe she was a granny drug dealer and that the hot water bottle was full of drugs. I thought maybe body parts. She was a 91-year-old at that point, single woman. She might have had a spurned lover or two. And wouldn't that be perverse if she wanted to keep those body parts with her in what could be her final moments? I don't know. I'm a writer. My brain was ticking. And so by the time I got to her house, I was at fever pitch and I needed to know what was going on. And I went into the house, I went into the spare room, I dug it up from under those newspapers, and it was fat, and I thought maybe it's the drugs. And I opened it up and it was full of cash. $50,000+. And Gwen was a woman of modest means, right? She didn't have a lot of money. And it was in elastic bands. And at this point I thought probably the drug dealing is a thing. And so I took it to her in hospital and I said, what on earth is going on? And she explained to me that it was a combination of a bit of, I can say this now because she's gone to that big nursing home in the sky, a little bit of pension fraud. So she was a bit of pension fraud and a bit of a fear of banks, all wrapped together. That was the hot water bottle. But at this point, my writer's brain had gone, and I knew that was going to, a hot water bottle full of cash was going to form the heart of the mystery that needs to be solved in the book. And so I put those three things together and I had the trifecta.
The other thing, you wrote this during lockdown, COVID lockdown in Australia. So did that have an influence on what you were writing too?
Yes, of course. I mean, who wasn't feeling murderous during lockdown? I remember looking at my husband. He's the loveliest man. I mean, and and he would walk past my office and I would just look at him and I would fantasize about how I was going to kill him. And I remember once saying that to him. I said, do you sometimes, we're very happily married, and I said, do you sometimes look at me and wonder, how you would kill me? And he said, no. And then I realised that was something I had to do with my girlfriends, to talk about with my girlfriends. So yes, I was definitely feeling more murderous, and the other thing was that I had to write in quite short chunks because my husband is the stay-at-home parent and he is the primary carer of our children, but of course they were all in the house at the time. And one of my children was 3 at the time, and she doesn't know about personal space and respecting boundaries and things. And in my office, I had put a lock on the door in COVID, and it was one of those latch locks on the inside, and it was double doors that came together. And I remember locking it, and then in this moment I looked, and there was this butter knife that had come between the crack, and it was scissoring up, and then it went flick, and the doors peeled open and she came in with this great big smile. Like, wasn't it wonderful that she had showed up? And so what I had to do was I had to write in very short bursts, which has become something that I love to do. I write 350 words at a time, and that forces me to, and this is just a nice byproduct, outrun the fear of writing. And I don't know if we have any writers in this room, and if there are, you'll never admit it, because confessing to writing before you're published is like confessing to a crime. People whisper it. I'm writing a book. But I find that writing in those short chunks really helps me to kind of outright the fear that we all get, that whatever we're writing isn't going to be any good. It also helps me to write something in between bursts of maniac children coming into my office, and also just to continue being productive. So in many ways, COVID changed my writing.
There are some heavy things in the book, but you find this great way of this dark humor. I mean, there's some funny parts. Tully is such a fun character. I've heard you say that she was your favorite to write in this book. Is that right?
I love her. She's really neurotic. She reminds me a little bit of myself.
Can we say she's a kleptomaniac?
Yes, Tully is a kleptomaniac. So I have wanted and had a long-standing fascination with kleptomaniacs for quite some time. In fact, ever since and I think probably a lot of you will remember in the 90s when Winona Ryder was caught shoplifting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. People remember this because it made world news, and everyone was appalled because we were like, why would she steal anything? She has money. And that never kind of made sense to me. And the thing about being a writer is that things stick with us. So be careful if you've got any writer friends, because we hold on to things. And for a long time, I just thought something wasn't right. I want to know what it was. Why would you steal something if you have money? And that led me to kleptomania. And what was so interesting about it was that I discovered that kleptomania, as opposed to shoplifting, is not about stealing something that you want. It's not about having the thing that you take. It's about the taking. And in that way, it's really quite closely related to other impulse control disorders like OCD, like some forms of self-harm. And it is at its root a coping mechanism that some people have. It's not a healthy coping mechanism. It's not like those smug people who go for a run when they're stressed out. No one likes those people, but it is a way that people cope. And then once I could see it that way, I could have empathy for Winona Ryder, who I have now diagnosed. She doesn't know that. Dr. Sally, and also Tully in my book, who was really looking for a way to cope with something that had happened in her past, which is what unfolds as the book goes on.
Yeah, there's a scene in a hardware store that, just hang on, because it made me laugh.
That was my favourite scene in the whole book. It was so much fun to write.
I can imagine.
And it really balanced, because it is terribly sad, but also quite funny in that way that things are in life. I'm often the one person laughing at a really uncomfortable moment in my life. But I'm glad you laughed at that.
I did, yeah. So talk about your books and success of them. The mother-in-law,
Yeah.
Amy Poehler, optioned it for a movie. How's that coming along?
It's going really well. They have done had two goes at the script, which I have read, which was really cool. And a lot of people ask, are you afraid as an author of people taking your book and, I don't know, ruining it? And I say, no, I'm excited that they're going to make it better, which they have, because then that makes me look good.
Well, so, and you're the executive producer.
Yes, I
on
am.
that, right? So what does that mean? How does that work?
I'm pretty sure that it means that I just get paid a little bit more and don't have to do very much. I'm hoping that's what it means. In general, what it means is that I get a seat at the table, essentially. And I've had other books that have been optioned as well. And it's important because of things. For example, The Good Sister, which has been optioned. One of the reasons,
that.
yes,
Ooh,
I've had
that's exciting.
a few exciting things, and optioned is kind of the beginning stage of something being made for people to know. It means that someone's interested in making it, but it hasn't yet got to the point where it's going to be shot. So it's that first stage. And for The Good Sister, for example, it was really important to me and continues to be important to me that it is played by an autistic character. I am part of a neurodiverse family. My son is autistic, and that is something that is a deal breaker for me. And so I guess it's to have a certain amount of control is important to me for those things that matter. I'm not really in there kind of questioning their decisions, because the reason that we went with them is because I think that certainly Amy Poehler and her production company are so good at what they do, and I trust their judgment. So normally I just read the scripts and tell them that they're great.
So how far do you think? I mean, it's still quite a ways, you think, or?
Well, it slowed down because of COVID. It was kind of really starting to get going, and there'd been some casting, and then COVID slowed it down. It's now kind of restarted, and we just saw a new revised script, and there's been a little bit of talk of casting. So I would probably say it's ticking along.
Yeah.
The next big thing, I guess, is if there's going to be a pilot being shot, and that's, watch this space. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's super exciting. So, okay, talking about The Good Sister, I heard you don't like sequels, right? You don't like writing sequels. Okay. But did I hear that Fern and Rose might make an appearance in a future book?
Yes, they might have a cameo.
Oh, good. I love them.
I was so fond of my previous book, The Good Sister. There was this character of Fern, and she's probably my most beloved character that I have had. And yes, I don't like writing sequels. I like a fresh new world with fresh new characters and a particular journey that I've created just for them. But I found it really hard to say goodbye to Fern. And in the book that I'm currently writing, so this is not, my next book is already finished. It's called The Soulmate. It's about marriage and murder. I also wrote that one in lockdown. There's a cliff and someone falls off it. But the one after that is a book that takes place largely in a foster home. And so what was fun about having this cameo of Fern is that it's not a prequel because it's not totally her book, but she will be in that foster home. And we knew from The Good Sister that was where she grew up. So there'll be a glimpse of her.
The last time I saw it was called The Cliff House, but it's not The Cliff House anymore.
No, it's changed its name to The Soulmate, which makes it sound so romantic, doesn't it?
And murder.
There's also a death in the first chapter. But it's also quite romantic. I don't know. I don't know how to describe my books.
Do you want it? Can you talk any
Oh,
about
yes.
it?
So, I'll tell you about it. So the background, of course, I've already told you that I was considering murdering my husband. And I did actually start a WhatsApp group with my friends, and it was called Husband Slanderers. During lockdown, because in Melbourne, we were in lockdown for 2 years, right? We weren't even allowed to leave our houses. And so we were all really angry with our husbands, who were lovely people, and we're all very happily married. But I remember when I realised I couldn't tell Christian how much I wanted to kill him, I started doing it to my friends, and then everyone would chime in, you know, just the petty things, you know, Stu was breathing today. Andy was eating food. My favourite was my friend Emily, whose husband was a doctor, and he was, you know, saving lives. And he had to travel still, and we weren't allowed to travel anywhere. We had to stay in our house, and he would go to Sydney to save lives. And Emily, this friend of mine, said, this morning I heard Andy leave to go to the airport, and I heard his little wheels like going over the front path as he went out to the taxi. And I thought to myself, if the plane goes down, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I got distracted. So I was telling you about the book. So it was against that background of marriage and murder. And then, as I was saying before, a book is never just one thing. You know, it was those three things with the younger wife. And I had that idea, murdering husbands. It was getting a good rap when I told people. You know, I'd say it's about someone murdering their husband. And, yep, write that book. But I thought, how can I kind of frame this in a way that will be interesting? And it was about that time that I read an article, and it was something that happened in Australia, but I've heard from a number of people that it made the world news, so you may have heard it. And it was an article about a man, and he had just died, and so that's why they'd written the article. He lived opposite a cliff, which was quite famous from people who wanted to take their lives, and they would go there. And the man had made a name for himself by going over there and talking to them. And he was called the Angel of the Cliff, and this was a tribute to him. And which was, I mean, so beautiful and so amazing. And it gave me an idea of a husband and wife who live on a cliff, and the husband has made his name out of saving people's lives. And then one day, someone goes over the cliff. Then we go backwards. And what was so fun about this book is that I also go into, so there are two people that go over, and I go into the perspective of the dead woman that goes over the cliff, and we go back over her marriage. So it really is an exploration of marriage, the things we put up with, the things we shouldn't put up with, the things we have to put up with, and what causes us to push people off the edge. So really excited about it.
And the thing is, I mean, you do research about the crimes and things.
Murder.
Right? Murder, right? I mean, in your notes of your book, you thank, you know, police experts and things. I can only imagine the questions you were asking these police friends of yours. And they must be fans because they haven't turned you in. Or, you know.
I have a team of homicide detectives that take my calls all the time. And they have had to say on a number of occasions, for example, with the mother-in-law, when I was asking step by step, you know, instructions on how to kill someone, a mother-in-law specifically, and they gave them to me and get away with it. Sorry, that was the important, like, how do I get away with it? And then one of them, you know, they were very forthcoming, and then one of them said, I think if your mother-in-law turns up dead, we're going to have to put this on the record, just so you know. But since then, because no one died, they now trust me. So it could be a perfect crime, but I can now text them at any time of day and say something like, how can I kill someone quickly without using any weapons? And they will just fire something back. And I just have this at my disposal, which makes me very dangerous.
Yes. Don't piss off Sally Hepworth. Right?
That's right.
Oh my goodness. There's so many places to go from there. I don't even know where to go. You have this thing where you read the worst reviews on Instagram. It's hilarious. But I mean, why do you do that to yourself, first of all? And your books have been so successful that has to be, I mean, you've probably played that out, right? I mean, are there many
real reviews? I read out my 1-star reviews occasionally just to, in case you hadn't noticed, I'm a real, I enjoy making people laugh. It's a real habit of mine. But look, the 1-star reviews are actually really funny. And particularly, I like to think that I attract a really funny kind of reviewer who hates my book, because quite often there's quite a few food analogies. Like I had one that said my books were like pizza, but Domino's pizza, so the type that you think is going to be a good idea at the time, but then afterwards you really regret it. And so terrible. Another one that said my books were cheesy, but not camembert. No, that nasty plastic cheese that kids like. And I thought, I would be friends with these people. This is clever. I think what's harder is the 3-star reviews, because then they're the ones that actually make really good points and they're quite considered, and you think, gosh, Dorothy, maybe I should have actually made that change. So those ones can cut hard. But on a serious note, those reviews don't floor me. And I think the reason is not because I don't believe them. I mean, I think that reviews are a gift, whether they're bad or good. It means people are reading your books. But ultimately, for me, the love has never been about one story. It was never about one particular story that I needed to tell, which is often the case with writers. They become a writer because there's a story that they just feel that they need to get out of themselves. For me, it's always been about storytelling. And I could tell any story. The love is in the delivery. And so if my book doesn't resonate with someone, I don't feel like that's about me. I mean, it's probably a little bit about me, about my skill. But in general, it doesn't kind of affect me in that way. I think, well, I hope maybe they'll like the next one. Yeah. And so I can, or maybe I'm just a hard-nosed Australian that they put that into us. But I just enjoy making people laugh, and people seem to love them. So
yeah,
not the books, I mean the reviews.
Yeah. The last time we spoke, you talked about how, I was like, is there anything that you have to have like around you or with you to help you, spur that creativity? And you talked about a jar of lipsticks.
Lipsticks.
Yeah. Do you still have a jar of lipsticks on your desk?
Of course.
And you just put some on?
I always have lipsticks in every handbag, on my desk, in the car. They're like, how masks have become something that we have everywhere now? That's right. Lipsticks.
But you call them lippy.
Lippy. Even when we did have to wear masks, I needed to have my lippy on because, I don't know, it just feels like underwear. Like you have to wear it. And in fact, sometimes when I get out of the shower, and I've got a clean face, and my little girl Clementine will say, "Why do you look strange?" And I'll get a lippy out of the pocket of my dressing gown, because they're everywhere, put it on, and she says, "That's better."
This is for you, because we want to keep fueling that creativity. We gotta keep that jar full, for sure. We'll keep you going.
That is so kind.
Absolutely. Aww. Sally, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.